I'm lightning like Steve McQueen. I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better push yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Morning Show, the top morning show in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines and, most importantly, provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak to transportation professionals on this show, as well as, well, pretty much everything that I do, because I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. I am on location in the Lou right now. We got Nelly's hometown out here. All right. You can find me in St. Louis for all those people who are, pre 2010 rap fans out there. But I got a special guest for you guys we're going to bring up here. We're going to talk about the power of collaboration, especially with all the things that are going on with technology and everything else. So the man who is here today has been on an airplane already today and has very little sleep. So Mr. Dan Hellmann in the house, ladies and gentlemen. Dan, what's going on?
Nothing, Chris. Good to be here, man.
No, dude, I'm just glad you showed up. I mean, especially getting a 6 a.m. flight this morning and everything.
Yeah, I was supposed to fly out last night and then pushed the flight back. Flew 6 a.m. out of Dallas this morning, got to Denver, got home, took the kids out to their schools and camps, and ran right over here. So,
Jesus, man.
A little sleep, but we're doing good. We're doing good.
That's dedication. That's dedication. You got a Red Bull or something there in front of you right now. Yeah. So
I went from coffee just to Red Bull.
There we go. You might as well. You're an adult now. That's what you have to do. So, man, what was going on out in Dallas? I saw a bunch of people were out there for, it was Mode. What Mode conference?
Yeah. So Mode Global, one of our customers on Tabby, they put together an innovation summit. So I've never been a part of something like this before. I haven't really heard of brokerages doing this, but it's pretty cool. So as a 2-day event. By 2 days, I mean like from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. back to back. And they brought all their strategic tech vendors together to start, kind of have an open dialogue of like, what are their goals? Allow us to poke holes in their processes and their goals. And maybe they're not thinking things right. And like for all of us to start collaborating together, more, I bring the tech vendors together, collaborate, show exactly what we can do. How can we integrate together? How can we work together to kind of help achieve what Mode's desired endpoint was. So it was a great lineup of companies. Like obviously we were there. Highway, Carry from Trucker Tools was there. You had so Banyan. You had a whole bunch of like really high level solid tech companies, and that we knew some of them, like Green Screens are a close partner of ours. Yeah. But some others like we haven't had much interaction with. So it was cool. It was really, really neat.
So, I mean, because that's one of those things where, can API connectivity and, getting systems brought up is like, it's almost like sometimes it's like pulling teeth out there to try and get that thing running. But it's like, how that affects your customers, I think, it's detrimental to their business, right? Because it's like, why would I want to sign up with a tech provider that is unwilling to even get an integration with some of their other ones, right? And it's prohibitive because like it's the brokerage that's suffering from this, right? For whatever reason. So was that kind of a topic of it? Is like, hey, as your guys' customer, we need you guys to get this shit done.
Yeah. So it was like going into it, I didn't really know what to expect. So I thought it'd be more of like, all right, how can we integrate better, or, streamline some processes? But it was much more than that, because we essentially, all the vendors came together to start mapping out what they want to do and how each company fits in and how we can start thinking outside the box of using data from like the rate quote all the way to like the carrier sourcing, like just making some jumps that normally wouldn't come up. But also like all the tech vendors together, there's a decent amount of that overlap in services. Like, that we might be like not full competitors, but kind of partially, there's a little bit overlap. But it was really cool is like when you're mapping it all out, everybody's able to put their egos aside and be like, you know what? No, your part of your platform is better for them than what we have, or vice versa. And so it's not like a grab of trying to sell something, get some more, but it's like, no, actually for what they're trying to achieve, this vendor is better for that aspect than this one, or just, so it was, fortunately, I mean, I think Mo did an amazing job of thinking and bringing people together and facilitating it and having a well-structured agenda, but also a lot of props to all the tech funders of just being extremely open-minded to like, all right, how can we all work together to achieve what the customer wants?
So is this something that you will see a larger demand for from your guys' users?
I could see it happening. I mean, it took a lot for them to plan it all out, and it's also a big time investment for the vendors as well. But we got a lot accomplished, and I could definitely see that taking part significantly more and more.
Because I think, like, as businesses evolve, as markets change, especially in freight, rates being what they are, is like, I mean, it does every single day. There's another headline about what's happening out there. Inevitably, headcount and technology are like the first two things people are going to look to cut from their P&L, right? And so it's like, how are you guys working through that to kind of get ahead? Because like with you guys, with like your quoting and everything like that, that's something to me that is like, it's almost like that's the one area of my business I would never want to mess with, is my ability to quote freight at a high level and in mass. Yeah.
So, everybody, every brokerage, every doesn't matter if it's a brokerage or you're a tech company or whoever you are, everyone's watching their spend. You have to make sure that every dollar you're spending, you're actually getting a good ROI on it. So what we're seeing, what we're doing is make sure to adapt with that. One, to show the ROI they're getting put in front of their face. There's no question, So one, if they're not getting it, we know that we got to step up our game and make it happen. Or if they are, it kind of protects our relationship a little bit. But we're also adjusting how we're going to market. We're adjusting our pricing a bit just to kind of be fluid with the marketplace and what it needs. Because like we've also done a big evolution over the past year, and I've been posts on this and LinkedIn, people might have seen, of like, all right, about a year and a half ago, we were focused on we're automated rate quoting. We're rating automation. Well, now it's evolved because rate automation is great. It's going to get you to that first step. Yes, that's an advantage now, but 2 years, everybody's going to be doing it. It's no longer an advantage. You have to be like, who's using your data better. And so we kind of evolved from rate automation more like rate management system. So being more data driven, the dashboards, how to use your data, how to direct your company by going off what opportunities hit them and not necessarily like tendered loads.
So do you think that, as the markets change like this, because I know that there's some tech companies out there that charge on a revenue based model, right? Or it's like, I don't like, I know it's not like a set fee, like it fluctuates and stuff like that. Why would a company do that and just charge based on revenue as opposed to just like a flat fee out there that doesn't change in the market, right? Because like, I'm just trying to think of that as like a business owner. Am I pricing myself out of a down market? So like if the market's down, all of my my revenue is down then as a provider, or is that people are betting on the fact that if they do that, their product will actually keep people's revenues up no matter what?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different strategies behind like the pricing of it. And I was on a panel at the TIA back in April, and we all kind of different tech vendors. We're talking about like how we price it, why we price it the way we have. And it's interesting. Two of us went from transactional based pricing to more like almost like a per seat or kind of more flat. And someone else went to transactional based pricing. And I know some guys do by, revenue bands based on how much revenues, by how much resources you're using. It fluctuates that way. So, I mean, there's a lot of different strategies behind it, but ultimately it's like, and that's a hurdle that tech companies have to kind of figure out, is what's the best way to price it so it makes sense for the customer, but it also does provide protection that it's not going to suck up a ton of resources. And that's not like resources as in server space. It's the onboarding, implementation, the maintenance, all those other things that go into it. Probably the fairest, in my opinion, the fairest form out there is just a purely transactional based pricing. We don't do that. We used to. We moved away from it because you didn't really know what your bill was going to be.
Yeah.
It's just like people want to know exactly what their bill is going to be each month. So we did some tweaks to kind of find that middle ground between it. And so that way it's just a little more easier to understand when you're buying what it's going to cost and what it's going to be going forward, because transactional is just, it could fluctuate significantly and you don't know what your bill is going to be next November.
Yeah, I think that, you almost pigeonhole your user on a transactional basis, right? Because it's like, I like the multi-tiered pricing that some companies have out there, right? Like, hey, our most capability program is $250 a month. Middle ground is 150, and then low and introductory is like 80, right? So like it gives them the ability to kind of like jump up or down based on that. Because I feel like, I've been a part of those, right? Where it's just like, oh, hey, don't put that load on tracking because we only have so many credits in a month and this and that. And I feel like you're actually losing out on servicing your customers as a broker the way that you want to because of that, right? Because if you have so many credits in a month that you can use out there, I think that really pigeonholes you.
Yeah, 100%. And especially like from our point of view, so we're on the rate quoting side. It's like if you're doing transactional, let's just say hypothetically, it's a TMS. A TMS is charging you so many dollars per load. With that, it's at least like, all right, we're going to pay transactional, but that is a guaranteed load. Like that is revenue to my company.
Yeah.
Us, it's hard to do transactional because like that's not a guarantee. It's an opportunity that you might win something that might be dollars. And so that's why we had to fluctuate with you. But yeah, it's when you kind of go into credits, people do start worrying about what their costs are going to be, and do you use it, do you not? And then you don't use the system to its full entirety, and then that's not good for anybody.
How has because you guys obviously with your guys' quoting and everything, like how has that evolved here, man? Because it's like I know from my perspective, pricing freight every single day. Again, I always like to put that caveat out there that like I'm actually bidding on freight shit. But I've noticed that for me, sometimes it's the speed is very relevant. Other times it's not relevant. But I've also known like if you can't actually move that shipment, don't even put a bid on it. Like, having those conversations with your customers. So like, is that something that you guys are seeing out there as well?
Yeah. So we're seeing, so within Tabby, since we're in a more rate management system, our thought process is like, you want that data, but you can't really capture data unless you automate it, because historically you can't do it. So we've set some things up where you can kind of funnel all rate requests through Tabby, automate just the ones you want. All the other ones just kick to the humans, do the old fashioned way, but we're still capturing those data points because there's some that you need a person to do. You shouldn't automate it, but what we're kind of seeing across the board, because we're tracking win-loss percentages, we're tracking response rates, all that jazz, is our response rates have been going up significantly. It's made a pretty good jump. First about, let's say 6 months ago, we were right about the low 60s average response rate across customers. And that missing percentage is because they put rules in place they didn't want to. Well, now our customers average about 78% of all quotes Tabby responds to. The other ones get kicked to the human if they want to or not. And part of it is, people are wanting to quote more just because trucks out there is one. But also as we're adding more controls, like you can kind of dial things in enough that you can tighten it up to hit those little nuanced ones and not make these broad strokes that are going to screw up some rates.
So how do you guys because we're talking about quoting, right? Like obviously a reefer load at -10 is quoted differently than a reefer load at 35 degrees and stuff like that. So does Tabby help discern that when it's coming out with anything like that? Or do you have to set those parameters? What does that look like?
Yeah. So you set those parameters. So it's what Tabby is. I want to be clear. What Tabby is not. Tabby is not a rate engine. Tabby is not doing predictive rating, telling you what you need to quote. What it's doing is it's doing the same things that you're currently doing in your head. Like from your experience, that for this frozen food shipper, you need an extra, I'm throwing random numbers out there, $300 because it's -20 ice cream load versus -10. And so you're taking all those that deep industry experience and kind of make it more template form. And so actually creating a quoting process and not just my gut says this and kind of throwing shit at the wall. So it's replicating what the reps are already doing, just be able to do it much faster, respond a lot more, and free up the people. So we're still, pulling rates. We're plugged into green screens, truck stop, like all the rate engines go to historical data. So it's kind of following that same process. Like right now, if you're mainly doing it, you get a rate request. What do? You go to your rate engine, do a repair, see what truck rate is. You add stuff up in your head because of it's a nighttime receiver or how much margin or all that jazz. And then you send it back. Tabby's doing the same thing.
So are you guys tracking? Because like I want to know where my quotes are at, right? Like I want to know what my win percentages are. I want to, because that's like I want to obviously at the end of the day, I want to deliver a consistent positive experience, like really just a consistent experience every single time. I want them to receive the exact same level of communication, the exact same response, everything through there. But pricing is another thing that I want to be as consistent as I possibly can, and I want to discern like, hey, what is my win rate at? How do I eke out a little bit higher margins and stuff like that? So are you guys tracking all of that data?
Yeah. So win rates tracking, then that's when you can start playing the game of like, all right, if I tighten up my margin by half a point, can I increase win rates by 3 points? I can start doing little tweaks. So win rate by customer, by equipment type, by lane, by region. So you can really do a lot of those dialing things in. And win-loss percentages is probably one of the most important metrics to track. It's also one of the hardest. It's not easy. And it's impossible to do it for 100% of the shippers out there, because sometimes they're just, you can't tie the quote to the low. Like it's impossible unless you have someone manually doing it, which is, in my opinion, one of the worst things to do. Like once you put a human in there, start manually tracking something, they're going to miss it. It's not going to be accurate. And the data point you're going to be looking at and benchmarking off of is a guesstimate at best. It's not 100% accurate.
Yeah, because like that's one thing that, because I mean, I could only imagine the amount of people whose pricing strategy is to take the rate from green screens and then just mark it up 20%. And then they bid everything based on that. And then, they might win 10% of their quotes, but if they dropped it to 18%, all of a sudden they're winning 40% of their quotes. And then the money that you might lose in like, air quotes, lose out on, you're actually making it. Because like, I think that people tend to forget that especially as a broker, you make your money in volume at the end of the day. You're not going to, very rarely do you make a ton of money or a ton of margin on one load. And then that's the only thing that you need to do in the week, right? Like you need to eke that out. Is it 12%? Is it 14%? Maybe it's 15% margins out there across the board. Then it's mode dependent too. Right. So it's like dry van, you might only be at 12% on all of your loads. Reefer, probably at about 15% margin is where you can sit at for that part. And then, flatbed is in that 15 to 17% margin as well. So it's like, it's getting that dialed in and then increasing your win percentages overall. Not like, oh, if I'm going to move a load, it's got to be at 20% or I'm not touching it.
Yeah. And that's what's like, doing that. Cause I remember back when I was a broker quoting out shipments, like, I thought I was good at quoting. I had my process, but looking back, my process is like, oh yeah, it's like a 3-day run. So mark it up by $400. I think I can get a little more, or this customer I can't make as much. I'll just do $325. There was no like true rhyme or reason. It was a lot of like gut checks. And when you can actually start dialing things in and saying, instead of quoting for a $325 margin, you quote for $317 because you found that's your sweet spot. It's like, if you're mainly doing it, you're not doing that in your head. And if you are, it's not going to be consistent because it's just too much. It's too much data to remember and too much.
Well, that's the thing, but it's also the system that you need to put in place, right? Like, because for other people, because as you're bidding out, any of your customers individually, whether it's you doing it or your backup or whomever, having that system down for people to follow is crucial. Like, I almost wonder how much revenue is left on the table because somebody doesn't know how to quote a load, or they are missing out. Like you do that $7 example, like you're saying right there, like that's a very real number out there. Like, because like we've done these back in the past too, where it's like, hey, instead of paying $1,900 on a load, try and get it for like $1,893 or something like that. But if you compile that over 1,000 shipments in a month, like that's a decent amount of revenue that you're adding every single month.
100%. I had an old boss back in the day that would always say it, and drove me crazy when they say this, but it's 100% true that you can't manage it if you can't measure it. And so you can't manage your quoting price. You can't manage how your people are quoting if you can't measure it. You can't measure it by people typing into a CRM. It's not going to do it. And so there's just so much like siloed off information in brokerages that this guy's really good at quoting because he's got 20 years experience. Well, how do you take that knowledge and apply it to this person who has 6 months?
Yeah. Dude, because I'm reading, like my eyes are like wide open with this right now because I'm reading a book called The E-Myth, and they use the McDonald's example about for the franchise model they're talking about in there, and like how do your systems are only as good as the worst person who operates in them, and that kind of opened up my eyes because it's like how many people they have 1 or 2 people who do all of their quotes. you know, and then like you're talking about that, the guy who has 20 years experience or 10 years experience and the person who has 6 months experience, why is the person with 6 months experience not privy to that information or that strategy? How much revenue are you costing your business because you don't have a system in place to help people quote?
Yeah. And you can put together SOPs and that can work to an extent, but I mean, I'm sure anyone listening to this, they probably have paid SOPs, put in a SharePoint, and never gets looked at again. You know, like it's trying to get people to actually start doing that. That's the hard part. And so it can work to an extent, you know, if you really want to like manually template it and say, all right, here's your template you follow, new guy. But it's just not scalable.
Yeah. No, I think that, but because that's the thing is you have to bring that stuff like down to the ground level because like the fact that, you know, our topic of conversation is about collaboration and stuff in the industry. It's like, how do you not collaborate as an organization?
Yes.
How is there so many different silos where ops versus sales versus accounting, like how is there not internal collaboration that's going on out there? Like the shared data. Cause like, dude, I've worked for a large broker before. Not sharing rates between teams was like a fucking thing, you know, and it's just shit like that because,
was,
you know, and then like loads to pay. And then like people getting pissed at each other. Why are you paying $1,800 on this lane? We got it for $1,400. And then you're just fucking each other over instead of collaborating and actually doing and speaking about what you're doing and having, again, a set system in place for people to follow.
Yeah, because that's one thing that came up this past week with Mode is so Mode's they're roughly at $4 billion in revenue company.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Sorry.
A few bucks here and there. But you know, they're heavy in truckload. They're really heavy in intermodal, LTL, partial, all this stuff. But they were talking also about collaboration, like how can they collaborate better between not just say like teams within the truckload sector, but like truckload and intermodal. You know, what's going to be best for the customer? Because that's always hard for brokerages because intermodal team wants it, truckload team wants it because they're both going to make money, and so you have that internal clash. So they've done a really nice job of working that internal collaboration. But it's that collaboration kind of goes more than just vendors. It's internal, like how do you get your people to actually work together?
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing that I think about. How many times is revenue left off the table because of situations like that, right? Or the people not sharing data, they're not sharing carriers, any of that information that's out there, you know, because again, I think like the silo effect is very real. And, you know, again, if you're not working, you know, and then another thing too, I wonder how many companies out there, again, they're like, it's not what's best for the customer, it's what's best for the sales rep in that instance, right? Because it's like, how many times are you looking at your customer's freight? And you know, and again, if you're in a large company, a small company, hey, this mode works best for the customer. It's going to give them the best price and the best service, as opposed to this works best for us. Let's price it at that, you know, because I know that stuff's going on out there because again, I actually move freight. And we have these conversations with our customers all the time where it's like, hey, we bid out 2 partials. Yeah, I can move them as 2 partials and I would make more money, but hey, they're going to the same region. Can we 1 pick 2 drop these? Yeah. Are they going to be right at the exact same time? Or, you know, hey, that 1 pallet, can we throw that on a Sprinter van? We don't need to put that on a hot shoe, something like that, where, yeah, it might affect my pocketbook on that transaction, but longevity, long-term, my customers be like, dude, these guys are bringing us the best options, and, you know, thinking outside of the box with it, as opposed to how can I benefit only?
Yeah. There's something that was said this week that really resonated with me, and I never really thought about this, but it's 100% true. Is that there are so many brokerages out there. They operate that when they get a load, it's like the first time they've ever moved a load.
Oh my God.
Get a load. And like, all right, now I'm going to go source a truck. I'm going to go, and then you know what? They get that same load a week later. All right, got it. Now I'm going to go and try to source another truck. Yeah. Like it's like everything is like a brand new step, and not look at the bigger picture. How you can tie these things together and create more operational efficiency, and not just operate like on a transactional level, load by load, like being very short-sighted.
Yeah, no, I think that's what it is, man. There's so much reaction that goes on, and it's like, you know, and again, I can resonate with that. It, you know, for us right now, like we have very, very busy weeks, 2-week stretches, and then we might not be that busy the next week, right? So it's like that excitement, that anticipation comes up like, oh shit, we got to load, we got to get, you know, it's like almost you forget what you did. But again, like that's the power of those processes that you need to follow. It's like, hey guys, we have been here before, you know, and it's the same thing in sales, man. Like, dude, you've been in sales for a long time, Dan. You know it just as well as I do. You get rejected 99% of the time.
Yeah.
And then you get that one yes, and you're like, holy shit, let's go. This is going to be the best account ever. And you look over all the red flags of them because it's like somebody's giving you a little bit of attention.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, you kind of got to take a step back, not put anybody on a pedestal, follow the process, and you will uncover the right opportunities in the long term.
100%. Yeah. And I was guilty of it back at the broker side.
Yeah.
And last first around, like I was going like just thinking load by load by load and not taking a step back in the big picture. And I kind of wish I knew now what I knew it back then, because it can completely change how a company operates. Kind of build the process first and then fit the loads in. Dude,
I love it. I got to be mindful of Dan's time because Dan's a busy man. And he's got to get off here and go to another appointment, you guys. But, again, look at it like this, you guys. Look at things from a little bit of a different perspective. Talk to your coworkers. Talk to other people. What is the best opportunity for your customer out there? And because, again, like that's who you need to make sure is taken care of the most in these instances. You got to put your own individual wins to the side to make sure that they're servicing the long term. But, Dan, how does anybody reach out to you to find out more?
Shoot me a message on LinkedIn's easiest. You can also shoot me an email, danh@tabbyconnect.com, but LinkedIn's the easiest.
Perfect. That works for me. Dan, I appreciate your time. And as always, you guys, if you guys got value in what you heard, subscribe to the show, you guys. Share it out there to your network, because if you see value, your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.